And I've had so many more people that have come to me and said, dude, you have never given up on me. You have called me. I've hung up on you. I have like blocked your numbers. You called me from other numbers. I mean, you are literally the most like intense follow-up person I've ever met. I want to do business with you. You'll notice like when a basketball game, a lot of times at the end of the game, they'll talk about 50-50 balls, you know? And one team just wanted it more. You know, one person just, you know, he jumped at it faster and he like was more aggressive and he just like, he went after it. And, you know, that's usually the defining point in the game. I mean, you could have a game where, you know, both teams are equally matched in terms of skill, value, you know, expertise, talent, etc. But one team just wants it more, you know? And so like what you're gonna notice with those calls is if you want it more, if you're more passionate, more intentional about it, they pick that up, you know? And they respect it. Now that's opposite of what you'll hear most people say. Most people will say, well, you know, you don't want to be too pushy, or, you know, well, you don't want to be too aggressive, you know, or well, you don't want to be, you don't want to get in their business, you know. But that's simply repeated by unproductive people. Like, consider that source. Like, never once in my life have I heard a top producing, super successful person say those three things. Never once. Okay, because I listen to a lot of people like that. If anything, they say you need to be more intentional. If anything, they say you need to call and text an extra time. You need to go the extra mile. Because it's not about the commission. You know, on the lending side, you guys stand to make maybe a few grand. On the real estate side, we stand to make maybe a little bit more, 4 or 5 grand. But ultimately, that money is gone and that money is spent. For the individual, in most cases, it's a lifelong experience. It's something that they're going to have for a big portion of their life, and it's going to be a place where they raise their kids. It's going to be a place where they build wealth and build savings and all these things. So it's not about the 3 grand for us, you know. Trust me, we like the 3 grand. We feed our children with the money. You know, it's important to us, but it's secondary to what's important for them, which is lifelong change, which is, you know, their financial situation moving in the right direction for their future in most cases, you know. But that's the other side too. Like if you're a real professional and you get across somebody that is in a home that fits their needs and has only lived there, you know, a few years, and it doesn't make sense for them to move, that's also the case as well. Well, hey, you know, if this home works for you, then maybe it's not a good idea for you to move, so let me help you save some money on your taxes. Let's keep in touch. Let me add value to you for these next 2 or 3 or 4 years, because at some point you probably will. But if you don't, I'm going to be the kind of person that says, you know what, you should probably stay where you're at. You know, it's not ultimately important for me to sell you something if you don't need it. I love what Zig Ziglar said. One of his interviews at the end of his life, he had to be in his early 70s or late 60s, and he one of the interviewers said, "Zig, we heard you're the best salesman that ever lived." Zig Ziglar was the father of motivational speaking. If you haven't looked up Zig Ziglar, you should do some research on him. You will love that guy. But anyways, the interview was saying, "We heard you're the greatest salesman that ever lived. We hear that you could sell ice to an Eskimo." And Zig said, "Well, let me stop you right there. I wouldn't sell ice to an Eskimo. An Eskimo doesn't need any ice. An Eskimo lives in ice. An Eskimo is surrounded by ice. An Eskimo has ice everywhere. An Eskimo doesn't need any ice. So I would be the worst salesman in the world if I was selling ice to an Eskimo. I can only sell something that people actually need." And to answer your question, if you've identified in that conversation that they need us, then we have to be intentional about that appointment. You know, and sometimes, you know, there was a great client that we recently are converting that's going to spend a few $1 million in real estate that Ben spoke to, and he didn't want to come to the office, but we were able to identify that he was the type of individual that simply we were going to come to. You know, he needed our help, but very busy schedule, super high net worth individual, and so we went to him. and now he's potentially under contract for at least $1 million, maybe more, in commercial business as well. And so it comes from asking good questions, and it comes from like identifying like what people actually need. And then you can, when you have that, you can say, okay, you know, we really need to get together. If they're willing to accept an appointment from you, then it's something that they actually want. I mean, every lead that you guys are calling is a person that has actually logged on to a website and has voluntarily given their information. They have raised their hand. They may have not raised their hand and started waving it, but they raised their hand, you know? They wanted to see that property. They may have done it just to see a pretty house, and that's okay. But they gave us the real name, the real phone number, the real email address. They could have given us, you know, donaldduck@disneyland.com, but they gave us the real information. And so sometimes they don't understand. There's a lot of sales calls out there. I mean, I get, you know, probably at least 50 or 60 a day from people trying to sell me solar panels, to telling me my car warranty's expired. You know, I mean, it just happens all the time. So people are in like defense mode. But if they get to that point where they're willing to meet with us, or they're willing to accept an appointment, where they're coming to us or we're going to them, then we need to be intentional about that. We need to call them, text them, follow up with them. Let them know if they miss it. Hey, you know, it's no big deal. You know, things happen. Let's get together at your next available appointment. And people respect it. I mean, I've had so many more people that have come to me and said, dude, you have never given up on me. You have called me. I've hung up on you. I have like blocked your numbers. You called me from other numbers. I mean, you are literally the most like intense follow-up person I've ever met. I want to do business with you. I want somebody representing me that works like you. And those are the calls that I really appreciate. Never once has anybody said, oh, you know what, the reason I worked with you is because you only called me once, it didn't bother me too much. You know, that has never been said in the thousands and thousands of people that I've helped over the decade and a half that I've worked in this business, you know? So that's what I would say there, Albert, is just be intentional, man. You know, people respect it. You know, people respect it when you're an influencer, you know, and that's the way influencers are. And ultimately, you know, they can block all your numbers and eventually just try to, you know, disappear, and then that's okay. There's lots of other people that do want our help. So, you know, sometimes you have to knock the dust off your sandals and keep moving.